Hello guys, welcome back to the quantity surveying workshop and to another video. In today's video we are going to be doing the part 2 for the measurement of our block work in the foundation for a frame structure. In the first part we measured for all the horizontal blocks, as you can see in the drawing here, while in this part, which is the continuation of the first part, we are going to be treating how to measure for the vertical block work. So as you can see, the horizontal block work that we measured has been highlighted with a green marker. So what is left now is the vertical block work. So that is what we are going to be treating in this particular video. So stay tuned as we get right into this. So in order to measure for the vertical block work, we are going to be using the same approach as we did for the horizontal block work. So we're going to be starting with this particular block work here. So if you can look at this drawing, this block work here is parallel to this block work at this side, because as you can see, this block work is in between call out 1 and this dimension over here. And if you can trace it, if you trace this dimension like this, you can see that it is at the same place with where this block work is at this point. So as you can see, this block work is in between call out 1 and this dimension here. Similarly, this block work here is in between call out 1 and this dimension line here. So whatever we have in 1 will be the same thing as what we are going to be having in this other side. So now what we want to do now is to measure for the length of this block work. So to do that, we have to determine what is the length of from call out 1 down to this call out. And in order to determine the length, you can see that we're given two dimensions, 1096 and 944. So if I add the two of them together, 1096 plus 944 is equal to 2040. So the dimension from this point, call out 1, down to this point here is 2040. So now, what are the columns that are in between call out 1 and this dimension line? We have column type 2 here and column type 3 at this point. And what is the dimension for column type 2? The dimension for column type 2 is 230 by 230. And similarly, the dimension for column type 3 in our drawing was giving us 230 by 230. If you remember in our previous video, we said that the dimension from column type 1 down to column type 4 was 230 by 230. So now, since we know that the dimension from call out 1 to this point is 2040, and call out 1 is passing through the middle of this column, similarly this call out is passing through the middle of this column, we're going to be minusing half of the length of this column from this side and half of the length of this column from this side. Whatever we have is going to give us the length of the block work. So now mathematically what that means is this: 2040 minus half of the length of column type 2. Half of the length of 230 is equal to 115. And similarly, half of the length of 230 at this point is equal to 115. So 115 plus 115 is equal to 230. So we can minus 230 from the total length from this call out 1 down to this point. So since we got the dimension as 2040, we can now minus 230, and that will give us 1810. So it means that the dimension from here to here for this block work is 1810. So since we know that this block work here is the same thing we're going to be finding in this block work here, so we can now multiply it by 2 to cater for the 2 block work. So now we can now begin our measurement. So before we move further, the total horizontal length for our block work, or the total length for the horizontal block work, is equal to 62,144. So whatever we get as the total length for our vertical blockwork, we're going to be adding it together with our horizontal blockwork to give us the total length of the blockwork. So we're going to be starting with the first one. So we said that the dimension was what? Was 2040. That was the length from call out 1 down to this call out here. So that's the dimension. So that's the dimension from this point here to this point here. So we will now less what? 2 by half of what? The length of the column, which is what? 230, and that is going to give us what? 230, and then we close. So 2040 minus 230 is equal to what? 1810. So we multiply it by what? 2 to give us the length for the 2 parallel blockworks. So 1810 times 2 is equal to what? 3620. So this is the total length for what? This blockwork here and this blockwork here. So I'm going to be using my marker to what? Highlight it. So the next blockwork we're going to be looking at are these 2 blockworks here, this one and this one. As you can see, they are parallel because they are in between call out 1 and 2. So if you trace call out 1, you can see this, and if you trace call out 2, you can see this. So this blockwork is in between what? Call out 1 and 2. Similarly, this blockwork is in between call out 1 and 2. So whatever we find as the length of this one would be the same thing for this one. So now the dimension in between call out 1 and 2 is 1096. And what are the column types in between that call out 1 and 2? This column here is column type 2, this column here is column type 1, and we said that the dimension of the columns from column type 1 to 4 was what? 230 by 230. So it means that these 2 columns are going to be having the same dimension. So you know the principle we take when we're trying to find the blockwork. We'll do, since the length is 1096, we'll now less 2 times half of what? The length of the what? Column. So mathematically it's going to be what? 2 times half times what? 230. So now we'll now what? Book. So we know that the dimension in between call out 1 and 2 is what? 1096. So we'll now less what? 2 by half of what? 230, and that's going to give us what? 230. So 1096 minus 230 is equal to what? 866. So we'll now multiply it by 2 because we have 2 parallel blockworks of this particular length, and that's going to give us 1732. So doing this, we've measured for what? This blockwork here and this blockwork here. So I'm going to highlight them. So the next blockwork we're going to be looking at is this blockwork here, in between this column type 3 and this column type 3. So this blockwork is in between this call out and call out what? 4. So first things first, we need to determine what is the dimension from this point down to what? Call out 4. And as you can see, we are given what? 3 dimensions: 2545, 452 and 1543. So we need to add these 3 dimensions together, which will give us the dimension from this point down to call out what? 4. So we'll add them together. 1543 plus 452 plus 2545 is equal to what? 4540. So the dimension from this point down to call out 4 is 4,540. So we will now use the same principle by lessing 2 by half of what the length of the column, because the dimension of this column is what 230 by 230, and similarly the length of this, or the dimension of this column, is what 230 by 230. So we're going to be minusing half of 230 from here, and we're going to be minusing half of 230 from here. So we'll now record. So the dimension from that particular dimension line to call out for was what 4,540, as we've calculated. So now less 2 by half of 230, and that's going to be equal to 230. So when you do the math, 4,540 minus 230 is equal to 4,310. So this is the length of that particular blockwork, from this point, from the edge of this column type 3 down to the edge of this column type 3. Now I've been multiplying this by any other. Now is this particular blockwork parallel to any other blockwork here? No. So the length of this blockwork now is 4,310. So now bring it to this side, so that will be easy for us to add at the end. So we've measured for this particular blockwork here. So the next blockwork we're going to be looking at is this blockwork here. And as you can see, this blockwork is in between call out 2 and call out 3 prime. So, and if you look at this, we have a parallel blockwork parallel to this particular one here, which is this one. You can see similar to this one, this blockwork is in between call out 2 and call out 3 prime. So it means that whatever we have here is the same thing as what we're going to be having here. So when we get the length of this one, we can now multiply it by 2. So first things first, we need to determine what is the length from call out 2 to call out 3 prime. And we were given 3 dimensions in between call out 2 and call out 3 prime. 944, 2,545, and 452. So we'll add those 3 dimensions together. 452 plus 2,545 plus 944 is equal to 3,941. So the dimension from call out 2 to call out 3 prime is 3,941. So what are we now going to be doing? You can see that in between that call out, we have a column type 1 and another column type 1. So what's the dimension of column type 1? Like I said before, it is 230 by 230. So what we're going to be doing now is we're going to be minusing half of 230 for this side, and we're going to be minusing half of 230 for this side. Whatever we have is going to be the length of the blockwork from the edge of this column type 1 to the other edge of this column type 1. So now let's do the maths. So the dimension from call out 2 to call out 3 prime, we've calculated as 3,941. So now less 2 by half of 230, and that's going to be equals to 230. So 3,941 minus 230 is equal to 3,711. So 3,711 is the length of this blockwork here, and I said that it is parallel to this one. So we're going to be multiplying it by 2 to cater for this side and this side. And that's going to be equal to 7,421. 7,422, sorry. So doing this, we've measured for what? This blockwork here, and this blockwork here. So the next blockwork now we're going to be looking at would be this particular blockwork at this side here. This particular blockwork here. So now, as you can see, this blockwork is in between this call out, this dimension line, and what call out 3 prime. So we need to know what is the length or what is the distance from this dimension line here down to call out 3 prime, and we are given what 2 dimension, 2,545 and what 452. So we have to add these two together. So if we add 2,545 and 452 together, we're going to be having what 2,997. And as you can see, in between that blockwork, we have what a column type 4 and a column type what 2. And like I said, the dimensions in our drawing from column type 1 to 4 were the same, 230 by what 230. So it means that column type 4 will have a dimension of 230 by 230, and column type 2 will have a dimension of what 230 by what 230. So now all we're now going to be doing now is we're going to be minusing what half of the length of what the column type 4 from one side, and we're going to be doing the same thing for the other side. So since the length is 230, 230 divided by 2 is what 115. So minus 115 from here and minus 115 from here. Whatever we have is going to be the length of our blockwork from this edge to what this edge. So we can now what do the math. From that dimension line to call out 3 prime, we've calculated it as what 2,997. So we're going to be lessing what half of the length of the column types from both sides. So that's 2 by half of what 230, and that will give us what 230. So when you do the maths, 2,997 minus 230 is equal to what 2,767. So this is the length of the what blockwork from that dimension line to column type what 3 prime. So now, since no blockwork is parallel to it, we are just going to be bringing it to this side for easy correlation in the future. 2,767. So it means that we've measured for what this particular blockwork here. I hope that makes sense. Please, if you have any question, I would like to see them in the comment section. So the next blockwork now we're going to be looking at are these two blockworks here. This blockwork and what this blockwork. That's the blockwork in between call out 3 prime and what call out 4. As you can see, the blockwork are within the same call out. So as you can see, this one, if you trace it, you can see at call out 4, and similarly if you trace it, it is at what call out 3 prime. So whatever we have as the length of this blockwork here will be the same as what we have here, because they are parallel to each other and they are within the same what call out. So now, what is the dimension given from call out 3 prime to what call out 4? We are given what 1,543. So now you can see that we have what for this part here, the column type that we have is column type 2 and what column type 4, while in the other one we have what column type 1 on this side and column type 1 on the other side. So we can easily say that whatever we have here as the blockwork here is going to be the same thing here, because like I said, from column type 1 to 4, the dimensions of the columns were what the same, 230 by what? 230. So whatever we calculate here as the length of this blockwork would also give us the same length for this blockwork. So now we are now going to what? Record. So the length from collar 3 prime to collar 4 was given as what? 1543. I'm now going to what? Less 2 by half of what? 230, and that's going to be equal to what? 230. So 1543 minus 230 is equal to what? 1313. So we're going to be multiplying it by what? 2 to cater for what? The 2 parallel blockwork. So multiplied by 2, we're going to be having what? 2600 and what? 26. So this is the length of what? The 2 parallel blockwork in between what? Collar 3 prime and collar 4. So we've measured for what? This small blockwork here, and this blockwork here. So I hope that's easily understood. So the next blockwork we're going to be looking at is the blockwork in between collar 4 and what? This dimension line here after collar 5, as this line here. So like we did before, we need to determine what is the distance from collar 4 down to this what? Dimension line. And we're given what? 3 dimensions: 2075, 2484, and what? 768. So we have to add those 3 dimensions together. So 768 plus 2484 plus 2075 is equal to what? 5327. So the distance from collar 4 down to this dimension line is what? 5327. So what are the column types in between collar 4 and that dimension line? You can see we have a column type 3 here for this column, and we have another what? Column type 3 here for this column. And what is the dimension of column type 3? It is what? 230 by what? 230. So we're going to be using the same approach by what? Lessing 2 by half of what? 230. So we can now what? Record. So the length from collar 4 down to that dimension line after collar 5 was what? We've calculated it as what? 5327. So now let's what? 2 by half of what? 230, and that's going to be equal to what? 230. So 5327 minus 230 is equal to what? 5097. So 5097 is the length of that particular blockwork. Is there any other blockwork parallel to it? As you can see, there's no other blockwork parallel to it. So we will now what? Take it to this side for easy correlation. So we've what? Measured for this particular blockwork here. So I hope that makes sense. So the next blockwork now we're going to be looking at is this small blockwork here in the staircase. So I hope you can see it, this blockwork here. So now this particular blockwork is in between what? Callout 4 and this dimension line here, passing in between was the column type 1 that is within that blockwork here, close to the staircase. So now we're given in the drawing that the dimension between callout 4 and that dimension line was what? 2075. And in between this callout we have what? The blockwork in between what? a colon type 1 and another what, colon type 1. So we know that the dimension for our drawing was what, 230 by 230 for colon type 1 down to what, colon type 4. So we're going to be using the same approach by lessing what, 2 by half of what, 230 to cater for what, half of the length of this colon type 1 and also half of the length of this colon type 1. So when we minus them, whatever we have is going to be the length of this particular what, blockwork. So now what, record. So the dimension that was given in the drawing was what, 2075. So now let's what, 2 by half of what, 230, which will give us what, 230. So when you do the math, 2075 minus 230 is going to give us what, 1845. So 1845 is the length of that blockwork close to the what, staircase. Is there any other blockwork parallel to it? No. So we'll bring it to the side. So we've catered for what, this blockwork here. So the next blockwork we're going to be catering for is this particular blockwork here at the other side of the word staircase. And what can you see? That this particular blockwork here is parallel to this particular what, blockwork. And the blockwork is in between what, call out 4 and what, call out 5. So first things first, we need to determine what is the distance from call out 4 to call out what, 5. And we are given two dimensions, 2075 and what, 2484. So we need to add them together. 2075 plus 2000 and what, plus 2484 is equal to what, 4559. So it means that the dimension or the distance from call out 4 to call out 5 is what, 4559. And in between that distance we have what, a colon type 4 and another what, colon type 4. And like I said before, the dimension for colon type 1 to 4 was what, 230 by what, 230. So we're going to be using the same approach by minusing what, half of the length of colon type 4 from this side and half of the length of colon type 4 from the other side. So with that, we can now what, record. So the distance between call out 4 and 5, we calculated it as what, 4559. So we'll now less what, 2 by half of what, 230. And that's going to be equal to what, 230. So 4559 minus what, 230 is equal to what, 4329. So this is the what, length for this particular what, blockwork. And like I said, this particular blockwork is parallel to this one. So what we can do to cater for these two, we'll multiply the length by what, 2. So 4329 times 2 is equal to what, 8658. So we measured for what, this blockwork here and this blockwork here. So we've measured for what, this blockwork here and this blockwork here. So the next blockwork we're going to be looking at is this particular blockwork here. This blockwork here. In between this dimension line and what, call out 6. So the distance in between this dimension and call out 6 was given as what, 1178. And in between that distance, the blockwork is within a colon type 3 and another what, colon type 3. So what we're going to be doing now is what, we're going to be minusing what, half of the length of what column type 3 from this side, and also half of the length of column type 3 from the other side. So we can now what measure. So the length is what 1178. So now let's what 2 by half of what 230, and that's going to be equal to what 230. So 1178 minus 230 is equal to what 948. So 948 is the length of what this particular blockwork here. Is there any blockwork parallel to it? No. So we've measured for what this blockwork here. So all we're going to be doing now is that we're going to be moving it to the side for easy correlation, since it's only that particular blockwork that has this length. So the next blockwork we're going to be looking at is this blockwork in between what call out 5 and what call out 6. So this is the blockwork we're looking at here. So first things first, we need to first determine what is the distance in between call out 5 and what 6, and we're given two dimensions, 1178 and what 768. So when we add those two together, we're going to be having what 1946. So the distance from call out 5 to call out 6 is 1946. So now if you look at this drawing carefully, you can see that this blockwork here and this blockwork here are going to be what the same thing. Why am I saying so? Number one, this blockwork here and this blockwork here are all within call out 5 and what call out 6. Secondly, the length of this column type 2 here is what 230 by what 230, and as you can see, there's no column at this side, but this blockwork is intersecting with another blockwork here. And what is the thickness of the blockwork? The thickness is what 230. So it means that if we minus what half of the thickness of the blockwork from this side and half of the thickness of this column type 2, whatever we have here is going to be the same thing as what we have here, because the column type, because at this point column type 2 and column type 4 are what 230 by what 230. So the length is also going to be the same as the thickness of what this blockwork. I hope that makes sense. So if I am minusing 2 by half of 230 to cater for what half the length of column type 4 here and half the length of what column type 2 here, that formula still goes for this side, because I'm going to be minusing half the length of column type 2 here, which is 230 divided by 2 is going to give me what 115. Similarly, the thickness of the blockwork is what 230. So if I do half of the thickness of what the blockwork, is still going to give me what 115, because the thickness of the blockwork is what 230. So it means that whatever we have here is also going to be the same thing as what we have here. So now we can now what record. So the distance from call out 5 to 6 is what we've measured it as what 1946. So we'll now less what 2 by half of what 230, and that's going to be equal to what 230. So 1946 minus 230 is equal to what 1716. So we'll now multiply it by what 2 to cater for what the two blockworks, because they are parallel. So when you multiply it by 2, you're going to be having what 3432. So doing that, we've measured for what this blockwork here and this blockwork here. So the next blockwork we are going to be looking at is this blockwork here. And as you can see, this blockwork is between what? This dimension line here. If I trace it, you can see this dimension line here, and then call out 6. So we need to determine what is the distance from this dimension line down to what? Call out 6. And we're given what? 3 what? Dimensions. 1178, 768, and what? 2484. So we have to add those 3 dimensions together. 1178 plus what? 768 plus 2484 is equal to what? 4430. So it means that the distance from what? This point here down to this midpoint here is what? 4430. And as you can see, the blockwork within that distance is in between what? A column type 1 and another column type 1. And what is the dimension of column type 1? In the drawing, like I said before, it was given as what? 230 by what? 230. So the length from here to here is what? 230. The length from here to here is what? 230. So now, in order to determine what is the distance for this blockwork, we're going to be minusing half of the length of this column type and half of the length of this column type. Whatever we have is going to give us the length of this particular what? Blockwork. So now we can now what? Do the maths. So the distance in between that dimension line and column type 6 is what? 4430, as we've what? Calculated. So we're now going to be lessing what? 2 by half of what? 230, and that's going to be equal to what? 230. So 4430 minus 230 is equal to what? 4200. So that will be the what? Length for this particular what? Blockwork here. So is there any blockwork parallel to it? No. So we're going to be bringing it to the what? Side. So we've measured for what? This blockwork here. The last blockwork we're going to be looking at would be what? These 2 blockworks here. This one and what? This one. That is the blockwork in between what? Call out 6 and what? Call out 7. So I want you to look at this particular blockwork very seriously, so that when I explain it, you can easily understand it. So now, the distance from call out 6 to 7 was given as what? 1920. Meaning that the distance from this midpoint to this midpoint is 1920. So now this particular blockwork, what can you see? It is in between what? A column type 1 and a column type what? 5. And the dimension for column type 1 is what? 230 by what? 230. And the dimension for column type 5 in the drawing was given as what? 300 by what? 300. Similarly, if you look at this one here, the dimension for column type 6 was what? 230 by what? 381. Meaning that from this short side is 230 and this long side is what? 381. So now what can we now see? We can now see that with what we have here, this length here for this blockwork is going to be the same thing as this length here for this blockwork. Why? Because here the length is what? 300 by what? 300. Also here the length is what? 300 by what? 300, because they are what? Both column type 5. Similarly, the length for this side for column type 1 is what? 230. While for column type 6, the shorter side is facing this side and is going to be what? 230. So it means that if I minus half of this length for the shorter side of column type 6, we are going to be having what? 230 divided by 2, which is what? 115. Similarly, for this side in column type 1, which we have as what 230 for the length, if I divide, if I find the midpoint of that 230, it's going to become what 230 divided by 2, which will give us what 115. So it means that the same thing we have here is also the same thing we have here. And similarly for column type 5, which is 300 by 300, if I divide this by 2 to get half of the length of the column type 5, we are going to be having what 300 divided by 2, which is what 150, and that is the same thing we are going to be having here. So it means that whatever we have here as this block work is going to be the same thing as what we have here for this what block work. So now we can now do the maths. So the length we've calculated as what? The length was given as what? 1920. So we'll now less what? Half of the length of what? Column type what? 1. And the length of column type 1 is 230 by what? 230. So what? Half of 230 is what? 115. So half of what 230 is equal to what 115. And similarly we will now less what half of what the length of column type what 5. So it's going to become what half times what 300 is equal to what 150. So 1920 minus what 115 minus what 150 is equal to what 1655. So 1655 is the length for this block work here. So we're going to be multiplying it by 2 because this block work and this block work is supposed to have the same what length. So 1655 multiplied by 2 is equal to what 3,310. So doing this, we've measured for what? This block work and what? This block work. So with that, we've measured for what? All the vertical block works in this drawing. So what we're going to be doing now is this. We're going to be adding all of our calculated block works together for the vertical side, and then we're going to be adding what we have in the verticals with what we have in the horizontal to get the total length of our block work. So when we find the summation of what 3,620, 1,732, 4,310, 7,422, 2,767, 2,626, 5,097, 1,845, 8,658, 948, 3,432, 4,200, 4,200, and what 3,310. We are going to be having the total sum of what 49,967. So this is the total length of our vertical block work. So we're going to be determining the total length of our block work by adding our total horizontal to our total vertical. So total length is equal to what? Vertical plus what? Horizontal. So for our horizontal, we calculated it as what? 62,144 millimeters. While our vertical, we calculated it as what? 49,967. So when you add these two together, what are we going to be having? We're going to be having what? 112,000 111. So this is the total length of our blockwork, 112,111. So the next thing now we're going to be looking for is the height of our blockwork. So to determine the height of our blockwork, if you can look at this section through AA, where's our blockwork? Our blockwork begins from the top of our our foundation footing down to the bottom of the overside concrete. Now, as you can see, our overside concrete has been given us this thickness, and it is giving us 150 mm. So it means that this rectangle that you are seeing here is our blockwork. I don't know if that makes sense. I would have wished if they used another kind of hatching to do the blockwork so that it would have been easily understood. So this rectangle now that you are seeing here like this, let me see if I can. This rectangle you are seeing here like this, this is our blockwork. So we need to determine what is the height of this blockwork from here to here. So once we determine the height of our blockwork, we will now multiply, we will now book it by our blockwork is measured in meters square. So since we've gotten the total depth or the total perimeter of the blockwork in the foundation, we'll now multiply it by the height of the blockwork to get our total area of the blockwork in square meters. So how do we determine the height of this blockwork? And as you can see in this drawing, the dimension has been given from the top of the oversized concrete down to the top of the concrete footing, and it was given as 1,350. So if 1,350 is the dimension from this point down to this point, and they've told us that the oversized concrete is within this dimension with a dimension of 150 mm, what can we now do to get this dimension from here to here? All we will do is to minus the thickness of the oversized concrete from this dimension here. Once you minus the thickness of the oversized concrete from this dimension, the remaining you are going to have will be the dimension from here to here. I don't know if that makes sense. So let's just say that we're removing this oversized concrete here. Whatever we have from here to here is the same thing as the height of the blockwork. So now let's do our math. So the length we're given from the top of the oversized concrete to the top of the foundation footing was 1,350. So we're now going to less the thickness of the oversized concrete. And we're given that the thickness is 150 mm. So when you do the math, 1,350 minus 150 is going to give us 1,200. So 1,200 is the height of our blockwork in this drawing here, meaning that the dimension from here to here is 1,200. So with this we can now book. We can now book by saying what is the thickness of the blockwork. In the drawing it said it was 230. So now say 230 mm thick hollow sandcrete blockwork laid in stretcher bond in cement and sand mortar in bracket 1:6 in foundation. Doing this, you've booked for your what, you've described for your what, block work in the foundation. Then the next thing now is to what, measure. So our block work is measured in what, meters square, meaning that we need the total perimeter of the block work in the foundation or the gaps, and we need the height of the what, block work. All these dimensions we've already calculated. We calculated that the total length of our block work is what, 112,111. So convert it to meters, we're going to be having what, 112.11, and then our height of the block work is what, 1,200. So you convert it to meters, that's what, 1.20, and then you close. So you need to do the math to get for the squaring column. So 112.11 times 1.20 is going to give me what, a total of 134.53 square meters. So this is the total what, area of our block work in the foundation, and then we close. So doing this, we measured for what, the total area of our block work in the foundation. So with this, we've come to the end of today's video, guys. I hope you derived adequate knowledge from it. Please, if you did, do not forget to like, share and subscribe to this channel because it helps the channel grow. I want to make one announcement. We are about getting monetized on this channel. I'm so happy, guys, and I want to use this opportunity to thank everyone who has been a part of this journey. We started this channel actively as at last year, and from that time till now we've been hitting massive milestones. I just want to say I'm grateful to God, and I am grateful to every single one of you who has made this possible. Thank you very much, and we'll see you in the next video.